Last time I saw my grandmother, she asked me was I still a praying man. I told her, yes ma'am. Well, she says, pray harder.
The fall season is a great time for horror fans as the nights get longer and it starts to cool. The decorations arrive in stores and neighbors begin to outfit their homes to signal the start of Halloween. Across the world, people celebrate the spooky season in different ways, like participating in parades and festivals full of frights, while others curate a list of their favorite pieces of horror media. There are many lengthy lists that often feature the scariest films to ever hit the screen, and others that focus on video games that make people scream. Regardless of how it's recognized, it's celebrated by plenty of people who enjoy the thrill and chill of the season. Here it's no different, so come along for the ride as we take a look at some horror-themed video games full of ghosts and ghouls for Halloween.
When disaster strikes, when the city quakes in fear, when there's no one to turn to, who are you gonna call?
When it comes to media, Sony's known for many things like the PlayStation or Spider-Man movies, but they also have their own multimedia franchise of ghost-hunting parapsychologists. Released in 1984, the Ghostbusters movie combined horror and comedy with spectacular special effects that were supplemented by actors like Bill Murray and Rick Moranis to become one of the biggest blockbusters of the 80s. Besides the movies, there were cartoons, merchandise, a hit song, and of course, video games. Ghostbusters video games released as early as 1984 alongside the movie, but as many people know, games based on movies aren't always the best. That's usually how it goes, but in 2009, Terminal Reality managed to develop one of the greatest Ghostbusters games, which was then re-released in 2019 by Saber Interactive. Developed against a decreased budget and during the middle of a company merger, Terminal Reality was able to do something that Sony couldn't do for years. They got a hold of all 4 actors behind the Ghostbusters and got them on board to lend their voices and likeness to the project. Surprisingly, they convinced Murray, who was hesitant to return to the franchise, but agreed under the assurance that Winston Zeddemore, the underwritten black character from the movies, played by Ernie Hudson, would be elevated to full status. The other 2, Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, who wrote the movie script, also contributed to the game script and called it essentially the third film.
Are you troubled by strange noises in the night?
Do you experience feelings of dread in your basement or attic?
Have you or your family actually seen a spook, specter, or ghost?
Ghostbusters, the video game, picks up 2 years after the second film in 1991. Unlike other Ghostbusters games where players jump into the shoes of one of the 4 members, this game puts players into the suit of a new recruit, a test dummy who fights alongside the original 4 Ghostbusters in missions across New York City and the Ghost Dimension. Many familiar faces and places from the films make an appearance, like the Sedgwick Hotel, where the Ghostbusters chased and caught Slimer. There's also a follow-up on elements that were briefly seen or mentioned in the movie, like an entire level dedicated to the librarian ghost that scared the Ghostbusters out of the building. Although players don't get to customize their own Ghostbuster, they do get to use their gadgets. The PKE meter can scan a variety of enemies like the Opera Diva Ghost and Stay Puft, as well as other original characters like the Spider Witch. It can also be used to locate artifacts scattered throughout levels, which add to the lore and lightly poke fun at its own merchandise. Players also get their own proton pack with additional fire modes like the slime gun and dark matter generator to fend off ghosts. While most ghosts can easily be fought off, some have to be worn down by a specific weapon before you can wrangle them into submission, which can get a bit repetitive, but as Ray Parker Jr. said,
Something is horribly wrong in the small town of Willamette. The mall has become the breeding ground of unspeakable mayhem. As veteran photojournalist Frank West, you suspect a terrifying conspiracy of epic proportions.
The The concept of zombies has existed in media since the early 1900s, but it wasn't until the release of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968 that redefined the idea into the flesh-eating monsters we know today. While comics like The Walking Dead have continued to take inspiration from the traditional Romero zombies, the creatures have continued to evolve across media over the years. Movies like 28 Days Later and the remake of Romero's Dawn of the Dead have featured fast-moving zombies or infected. Meanwhile, video games have taken inspiration from both the old and new zombies with games like the Left 4 Dead and Dead Rising series. Developed by Capcom and originally released in 2006 with a re-release in 2016, the Dead Rising games took clear inspiration from Romero's work, down to its depiction of zombies and the overall setting of the first game. Romero's Dawn of the Dead featured survivors that took shelter in a shopping mall, which added endless possibilities with all the available stores. Due to the similarities, there was a lawsuit against Capcom by the movie's production company, but the court ruled in favor of Capcom. The judge added that the similarities were driven by the wholly unprotected concept of humans battling zombies in a mall during a zombie outbreak. Although there are plenty of zombie games, the mall setting and its comedic approach is what made Dead Rising stand out among all the other over-serious zombie media. Thanks to the surprise success of the first game, there were a total of 4 main entries in the Dead Rising series, along with a few spin-offs.
I told her Fortune City would be safe, but I was wrong. Now we've got 72 hours to escape, and in this city, creativity kills.
The first sequel, Dead Rising 2, released in 2009 with a similar tone and built upon all the good aspects of the first game. There were new attack animations, the ability to combine weapons, more enemies, a multiplayer mode, and a fully cooperative campaign which allowed a friend to join your game. Dead Rising 2 moved away from the American-inspired shopping mall to Fortune City, a casino resort in Nevada full of stores, movie theaters, clubs, and thousands of zombies. Despite there being more zombies, they were never the true antagonists, as there are other survivors who have gone mad or have their own interests that take advantage of the zombie outbreak. Enter Chuck Green, an ex-motocross champ who has been framed for the outbreak and has to find evidence to clear his name while trying to survive and keep his daughter alive. This new sense of urgency, together with the expanded setting and improvements, made Dead Rising 2 one of the best entries of the decade in the hordes of zombie games.
We can't wait any longer! Get back on the chopper! I have to find my daughter! Go!
We interrupt this broadcast for a special news bulletin. Aliens have invaded Earth and begun a massive assault. There are huge explosions everywhere. Entire city blocks are burning. They have come here to destroy all humans. No one is safe from the destruction. The end is near!
Well, I guess now is a good time to tell you, you're not Reggie's real father.
Nonsense.
Destroy all humans. In stores now.
Long before the xenomorph terrorized Marines in space where no one can hear you scream, aliens were depicted as invaders in media, like in H.G. Wells' famous novel, The War of the Worlds, which was said to have caused mass hysteria during a radio broadcast in 1938. Coincidentally, this was the beginning of the golden age of science fiction that led to films full of alien invaders set during the Cold War. While these movies may be seen as cheesy by today's standards, they've been culturally significant for decades, thanks to themes like anti-war, and have continued to inspire modern media.
In over 20 years of broadcasting, I'm at a loss for words. I can only describe what I'm seeing as not from this earth.
Although many other pieces of media have paid homage to this age of sci-fi, not too many video games have embraced the era wholeheartedly. This was one of the main reasons that made Destroy All Humans stand out from other games during the time. Originally released in 2005 and developed by Pandemic Studios, who are known for other games like Star Wars Battlefront and Mercenaries, Destroy All Humans was a loving parody to everything that made the golden age of sci-fi significant. Initially pitched as a joke, its concept was made to contrast the media where alien invaders are the enemy. Instead, you would actually play as the invaders, which was a promising premise to cause mindless destruction. Despite a strong start with solid sales and 2 sequels, the franchise sat dormant after the publisher THQ went bankrupt. However, there Their assets were acquired by Nordic Games, who then rebranded as THQ Nordic and revived a few titles like SpongeBob, Battle for Bikini Bottom, and Destroy All Humans. Released in 2020, Black Forest Games remade Destroy All Humans from the ground up with updated graphics, gameplay, and included cut content from the original game. They also added additional upgrades to the alien arsenal, new abilities, side missions, and refined the controls for a smoother experience. Set in the late 1950s, Destroy All Humans follows an alien sent to Earth on a mission. After their cloning process starts to degrade, Crypto-137 is tasked with harvesting human DNA and finding the fate of his missing predecessor while fighting off the US Army and government agents.
Did you see what I saw? You bet your sweet ass I did. What did you see?
As a sandbox game, there are multiple locations including a southern farm, a midwestern town, a coastal city, and a secret government base to explore and wreak havoc. The alien approach allows for a creative loadout like the Zap-O-Matic, a jetpack, and mental abilities. Crypto also gets his own flying saucer that comes equipped with weapons like an abduction beam and a death ray to blow up buildings Independence Day style. All together with its playground of destruction and sense of humor, Destroy All Humans exceeded expectations and is a welcome return for a cult classic.
Okay, monkeys. You want a war? You got a war.